Hey everybody, super excited to go over an example with you today. I wanted to talk about clean architecture in Flutter, and it's something I've been doing in a couple of my apps and thought it'd be really useful to kind of share it back out. There's a lot of reasons why you'd want to choose clean architecture, and I'm not going to kind of dive into that details too much. There's a great book on it and many blog posts, but this is more of an example of how to approach it with Flutter. Today we're going to be building a to-do app. I think this is one of those hello world of applications. It covers CRUD and a bunch of other things, but most importantly, it lets you kind of learn a new way to approach something even if you haven't done it before. But yeah, as always, if you have any questions, please drop them in the comment or reach out to me on Twitter, and I have all that info down in the description. So I think that pretty much covers the intro. We're going to be going over a lot of different stuff today, so you can always download the repo at the end and get started. And like I said, this is more about how to what's the actual mechanics of building in Flutter with this kind of paradigm, which you can use in a variety of languages, and not so much what is clean architecture. So I think that about covers it. Let's go ahead and dive in. So I have a just straight up empty folder that I've created called Flutter To-Do App. I'm going to be using VS Code today, so I know that a lot of people have different IDEs, but hopefully this can kind of transfer. I have the Flutter SDK already installed and the Flutter extension, all that kind of stuff set up. So if anything doesn't work for you, make sure to go to flutter.dev and check out those installation guides. Okay, so that pretty much gets us to this point. Let's go ahead and open up our terminal. On macOS, you can do the Control-tilde key to pull it up, which is a helpful one. This just gives us our integrated terminal. We're going to do flutter create and period. This is going to create the default project using the latest version. I'm currently on the master channel. All right. One thing we need to do since we just installed it is reload it, so then the Flutter extension picks up that this is a Flutter project. Awesome. All right, the good old counter app that we see every time we create. Okay, so there's a couple reasons why you want to have an architecture for your application. I know I've been bad before about just putting a lot of my logic into the stateful widgets, passing things around through basically the build tree, and running into situations where I have something over here that wants to depend on a very small widget over here, and then trying to share logic becomes a nightmare. We may have all been there, but there's times and where you need to kind of rethink about like what's the best way to do this. And something I have been very happy about is finding out about Riverpod. Riverpod, if you're not familiar, is a cool package from Remy that is, and lots of others, but it is trying to come up with a new approach, how Provider used the build tree and inherited widget. This uses build time, and it makes it a lot better for how we want to like basically pass in our dependencies. So there's this package, and we're going to be going over it in a minute. But for right now, I want to kind of go over what does it even look like for our folder structure. Cool. One thing in VS Code that you may not know is you can create files and folders based on the path. So we can go in here, and for example, I can do test/example.dart, and it'll create the folder for you. We're going to be using this a lot, but so if you're not familiar, make sure to do that. We can hit delete. Okay, so let's approach this in a way of how we would even think about writing this, right? A to-do app will need a repository of to-dos. So, the actual to-do object itself, which may contain a title, description, whether it's been completed. We have some kind of view for seeing the list, which will depend on that list of to-dos. We may look at a detail screen. We may delete, add, But overall, we have these different use cases, I guess you could call them, and examples for like how we're going to send the data around. And then also we have ways of storing those to-dos, because if you opened up your application every time and the to-dos disappeared, then it wouldn't be a great to-dos app. So we're going to be covering persistence today too, and how you can actually swap out your implementation for testing and maybe different versions for both browser and Dart.io in general. Cool. So with that being said, one thing I like to do is start with the domain layer. In clean architecture, the domain layer is everything that your application business stuff depends on. This isn't packages. This isn't anything that depends on the UI or framework. This is literally just, what does my company care about? So we're going to create a new file. We're going to do domain, and we're going to have a model, and then /to-do Dart. So pretty cool. I'm also going to be using another package called freeze. This is another great package that allows for immutability, being able to actually create like copy with and a bunch of other things. If you're familiar with JSON serializable, this kind of takes it another step. So we can go ahead and install that since we're going to be using that first. So I'm going to hit Command C here, go back to our integrated terminal, hit enter. And because we're using Flutter, we can go in here and copy this. Oh, and if you want to see that over here, I'm just pasting in these commands and hitting enter. So what that's doing is updating our dependencies and adding them to the right places. And something I do usually on most projects is remove all comments. There's an awesome extension about that, and then I can just format it. This gives us a nice clean PubSpec YAML. Okay, so we have that. And then we can also install Riverpod the same way. So I'm going to copy that command and paste it over here. Cool. Awesome. So we should be in a good place. Let's just see. Now that we have our model, let's go ahead and create a freeze to-do model. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy one of the examples in freezed, and we can just remove these comments. The parts need to be the same as the name, so you can hit Command D to select both instances. We're going to do to-do. We actually don't need to depend on Flutter Foundation here. Remove that comment. Select all, to-do. Okay, so now we can say we want a title, maybe an optional description. And we want to have it if it's marked as, completed. Instead of required, I'm actually going to do a default of false, so that it will be, non-nullable, but it will have a default value. Cool. And then one final thing I want to do is I wrote a command line tool called Flutter scripts that allow you to actually define scripts in your PubSpec YAML. And so I can, for example, go over to my VS Code instance, and here at the bottom, include a scripts, and then build, and then paste. And what this does is allow me to come back to a project and remember what scripts I need to do. And this can, each script can have multiple nested scripts in it, but you'll see the point. And then finally, we can go run the command, and I'll show how to install it later, but you can do Flutter scripts, then run, and it'll look through your scripts and show you a menu to select them. We'll hit build, and then it'll do that real quick. And then while that's doing that, I'm going to go over here and make this say watch. And this will be for our dev mode when we add new models. Okay, looks pretty good. We did get a fail, and that is because it was mapping at the same time. We're gonna hit run. And see, now we have both of them up there. We're gonna hit build. Sometimes it may take a second just to kind of get it all configured. Cool. And then one other thing that I'm going to do is ignore these files. So by default, we get the freezed and generated files, but we can actually go in and update our VS Code settings to exclude it for this project. So we're going to go in and do .vs code /settings JSON, and we can just create, I just pasted this in here from another project, but what this does is, now you see this disappeared. Now, you may run into something where you've deleted a file and removed it, and then those generated files exist. Just feel free to go in and comment these out, and you can delete those old files, because sometimes your project may compile, but you might have like an error show up on one of these folders. I know I've ran into that a couple times. Okay, cool. So we got that set up. We have our model. All right, so now we're thinking, okay, we have the to-do class. This is something our UI and our data layer can depend on, that depends on nothing else. We don't want, like, so for example, if you had an ORM with SQLite, you would want to have some kind of a mapper that maps this from and to the ORM. This is what your application depends upon, not your dependencies. The whole thing about clean architecture is you can easily swap stuff out, and you shouldn't have to like slow down your development because you're always trying to fix these dependency migration stuff. I kind of just got to the point where I needed to look at something like this, because I kept running into, well, I'm spending all this time refactoring these things that aren't my application logic, and I wanted to be writing more of that. Cool. All right, well, I won't belabor the point, but we're gonna create a repository. So inside domain, we can create a repository /to-dos, and I like to use barrel file here, barrel files, and that's because I really like the way the imports look, and this is just a personal preference, but definitely do it however you see fit. Okay, so important thing here is we're going to create an abstract class. This is not going to have the implementation for the repository. That's something we're going to define later, and that's going to be important for both testing and then other implementations. So we can do abstract class to-dos, and GitHub Copilot already suggested it for us. That's great. We can go ahead and import the library, and then I'm going to just, since I have this spell checker, which I am terrible at spelling, we'll have it for us. Cool. So this will have a list of to-dos. It'll save to-dos. We can also do other things like, actually I'm going to do this save to-do with a single to-do. We're going to go here. We're going to have probably delete to do. Speaking of which, we probably want to have an ID field, which we can auto generate, but that is something we can go ahead and have. I'm going to go ahead and hit the watch command, so it'll include changes going forward. Okay, so we have to do. We actually can just pass in the to do here, because we can grab the ID from there. We will want to delete all in case they wanted to have a clear all button, which we can always do later. And we'll have save, delete, load, and then get. Because if we want to do URL routing on the web, we may only, we could be using GoRouter and grab that ID and then be able to show a screen like that. Cool. Looks good. And then, yeah, so the nice thing about this is you can start to define your application in terms of this is the contract of what I want to define, and then other things depend on this contract, but don't actually care about how it's implemented, right? I could have an implementation that's in SQLite, change it out for something that's in Hive, swap it out for Firestore. You kind of get the point. But the whole thing is your application doesn't actually care. And it makes, like, when you're running into a bug or running into testing, super simple because you define very explicitly how that works. Okay, so now we have two files. We have our actual model itself and then our repository. Now, this may not seem like a lot, but this already is something that's going to help us later. Inside our lib, we're going to create a new file called data and repository, and then to-dos. So, and then underscore imp, which will be for their implementation. And here is where we can actually define our abstract class implementation. So I'm going to do this, and it's going to suggest that we import it, and then we can implement it. Right now, like I said, still, we don't have a lot to see yet. But now, this is where Riverpod comes in. I'm going to just go to the docs and show that there's multiple ways how to do this. But one of the nice things is we can just straight up use the provider scope, which gives it to us, consumer widgets, and then be able to define providers. For example, a provider in Riverpod is literally just a top-level global instance, and then we depend on it, and it verifies, the reference counting and all that. So we're just going to go in here and let's see. Did we already install it? Yes. Okay. So we can go in main. Going to go ahead and add our const there. There we go. Again, we can ignore this for our workspace. It's just very specific. Okay, so we have our scope. And then now, I like to, in every folder that I want to have providers, I create a module.dart, which will then contain the implementation. So, and here I can say to-dos provider. And it's going to be a provider of to-dos repository with the implementation, just like it suggested. Okay. We can import it, the abstract from there, import Riverpod, and lastly, import our implementation. Cool. You may be wondering, like, why are we doing all this boilerplate? Well, that's going to come in later. But at least for right now, we have a very clear understanding of what's going on. And if you have any questions, please let me know. All right. We're almost done, except we're going to do one more thing, and we're going to create a new folder called source. And let's say when we want to have, we're going to do, this will be our persistence. So we need to have something that makes sense. We'll say files. Okay. And then we can do abstract class files, and we want to have we'll try to think of about like a key value kind of style. So we'll have like a future string read, and then we'll have a write and delete. Cool. And then we'll, like we did earlier, we can have our implementation. Okay, implement it there, have it here. All right, and then like I said earlier, we will do a top level module will have files provider, files MPL. Going to import Riverpod, files, and our implementation. And here is where some of the magic happens. Now we can go into our to-dos, and our implementation, not a repository, can depend on the files. So here we can say, we can do files, and we will want to create a constructor. Awesome. And then now we get that warning. But the nice part about Riverpod is we can just read our implementation. So here we're going to say files provider. Just going to go ahead and fix that import. And then cool. So now not only do we have our to-dos provider, but we have access to both our source and our to-dos repository that can read something from a file system, which we're going to implement now. Now, for demonstration purposes, we can just create this as a in-memory representation. And the nice part is we can create another implementation called SQLite and stuff like that. So in fact, to better help with just the readability, I can go in here and do rename symbol. And I'm going to do files memory implementation. And I'm going to rename this too. Awesome. It may take a second for it to analyze. Oh, and then one thing, read, delete is using an object for some reason, but that's okay. All right, so for this, I would say just like a hash map would be fine, or just a regular map. So we'll do files. Yeah, I think GitHub Copilot will be just fine on this. We're going to do files remove, of course. And I'm just throwing async here instead of doing a return resolve feature. Here we're going to have our content. Cool. So we can see it's pretty straightforward just to depend on that. Here, I'm going to fix that import. And now we can start to focus on our to-dos. So since we're in a repository mindset, we're going to read the latest to-dos, iterate over them, grab them, delete them, or whatever, and save them back to disk. Cool. So we probably want to have a key, since our files, takes a top level key. We're going to do late final string, and we're going to do, yeah, that's fine, to-dos. Actually, I can just name it as path. That's fine. Awesome. So this will kind of show you why this kind of contract relationship works. So we're going to first get the, or actually here we're just going to simply delete files by path. And then, so that's going to delete. And then since it returns nothing, we're fine. Here we want to load the to-dos from path, transform it to JSON, and then the to-dos list. Let's go ahead and fix that typo. We're going to search the to-do by ID and optionally return. Okay, another package I know we're going to need, which I'm just going to go ahead and split this, is collection. I love collection. I'm going to bring this up real quick. Collection is really cool. It's a bunch of different extension methods on both list and other stuff, but one of my favorite ones that, if you're not familiar with, is first where or null. I love that one. So We're going to do Flutter pub add collection. And here we're going to grab the content. If it's null, we just return null because it's not going to exist. Here we can transform it to JSON. So we're going to, let's do JSON data, and we're going to do JSON decode content, and then we're going to do as a list. Oh, and then maybe this is another case to show why freeze is cool. We're going to go ahead and make our lives easier by creating an immutable reference of our to-dos. So I'm just going to copy this. We're going to create a new file called to-dos. There, and we can just rename all these to to-dos. And instead of anything in our constructor, we can just have list of to-do, and then a default. This will also handle the deserialization for us. We can import it there, and then back in our repository, wait, let me fix that double S. Back in our repository, we can load the to-dos. Instead of a list of to-dos, we can grab a single instance of that list array. Back in our implementation, likewise, we can adjust that here. Instead of a list, we're going to import this, and I'm actually going to move this up a little bit and move this implementation right here. Sorry for jumping around a little bit. Hopefully this will make better sense. Here we can return that array. Oh, another nice thing about this is we can do things like being able to store multiple lists, and so multiple collections of to-dos if you wanted to give the user an option to do that. So now, instead of this, we can do to-dos from JSON. Cool. And then we can remove this, and now just have a list of our to-dos. And in fact, we can just return it. Once we have that, we can now depend on this here, and not forgetting to await it. Cool. So this is where the collection comes in. We're going to have to do is where the first where or null. Let's see, to-dos. Let's do values. I think that'll make more semantic sense. Yeah. And then fixing that here. Let's get freezed a time. Let's give freezed a time to finish. Okay, I'm just gonna kill that and run the build command directly. It should just take a second. Sometimes it'll kind of get in this like infinite loop if you're doing too many edits at once. While we're waiting for that, we can import collection, and you see we now get an optional type, which is pretty handy. And then, oh yeah, like before, I can just go ahead and return. Okay, so still looking good. So far we're only in the get, and we've done delete. Let's also go here. I see the mistake. We did this out of order. We'll do here, delete all to-dos. Then this is the one where we want to grab the latest. And then just optionally remove the one item. if it exists. So to do is like that. It gives us a new list back, and then now we can save those to-dos. Here we're just converting it to JSON and then writing to the path. And this is going to be very similar to what we just did. Now we can throw in the save to do. Cool. GitHub Pilot definitely saves a lot of time when you're kind of working off of a lot of these common copy and paste kind of things. Okay, here we added the to do, wrote to it. Yep, all looks good. Now we have an implementation, and I think we're ready to start on the UI. Let's go ahead and see what the error was. That's good. Okay, so now we've covered data and domain. Just going to expand these real quick so we can just have a quick recap. Our domain layer is the layer that our application depends on. These are things that don't depend on packages. Repositories is repositories of models that we just defined, which then are a repository in our data layer implements, which can depend on sources that are pulling out to other things like disk I/O, file system, network. All these could be considered sources. Cool, but you're probably wondering or waiting for us to build some UI, and that is what we're about to do. Okay, so let's create a new layer called presentation. And I like to have a couple different folders in here called view model, state, and widgets. State is anything that is going to represent like an actual object of state, so you may have a to-do state where you may have UI state, I guess is a better way to say that. But then the view model is actually what implements it. Our view is for any top-level screens. And in fact, sometimes I do rename this to screens. But for the sake of this example, I'm going to keep it as view. And then widgets are any dummy widgets is sometimes a way you could refer to it, but it's things that don't depend on anything or just basically depending on material and rendering only. So in our presentation, we can now do a top-level file called app and router. Cool. So while we're thinking about it, let's go ahead and add Go router. Okay, and now let's create our app. So this is going to be like your actual entry point to the application. I like to always name it the name of the application that we're building, so I can just call it To-Dos app. This will be a top-level material app. We'll later convert it to a router. We're going to turn off the banner. We're going to have a title called To-Dos, and we're just going to implement this in a second. I'm going to grab this, go up to our main, and replace my app with this one. We can remove everything in the bottom. All right, cool, looking pretty good. Now we can set up our router. So this will be a Go router. Awesome. Let's go here and have our routes. Now we're going to go back to our app. We're going to do material app.router. We're going to have instance of our router that we're going to pass to the route information parser. Well, let's go ahead and import it so we can get the IntelliSense router information parser, and then we're going to have router information provider. And then we're going to have one more called router delegate, I believe. Yeah. Awesome. So now we have our basics of our routing setup, which we're going to later implement. This is using also the Navigator 2.0 if you want to dive into that. Okay, and then finally let's do a theme. I'm going to do theme data light and theme data dark with a theme mode of system. Cool. And also we can take advantage of a new material 3 color scheme thing. I'm going to pick a color for my application. So I'm going to do colors dot, let's do green actually. That'd be cool. Yeah, let's do green. And then now we can go in here, called use material 3 to true, color scheme, right? Yeah, color scheme. Oh, copy with, sorry. You guys may be already seeing the error. Okay, copy with color scheme, scheme from seed. This will be our seed color, and a given brightness. I always like to do trailing commas so it makes it nice and clean. We can just copy this and we'll replace it with dark. Okay, 1, 2. All right, so now we should have a pretty decent scheme, or theme for our application rather. We'll have our router set up, which we're about to implement, and our theme. Cool. So let's go into view and just let's go ahead and create a placeholder called home. Go in here and do home. We can go back to our router and just have a default. Just gonna delete this, import. I do believe we can do constant. Let's see. Oh, I corrected the wrong one. Builder. Awesome. Let's just go ahead and do initial location would be /. Okay, so I think we're about ready to run our application, and I'm going to be running it on Mac OS here, just to test it pretty quickly locally. And I think we're good. So I'm going to go down here and do Flutter run D. Sometimes I like to run it through VS Code, but oftentimes I just like to run it from the terminal. So I'm very explicit about when I'm hot reloading, which, you know, the editor gives you, but this is just, for me, it makes it pretty fast. Cool. So while that's waiting, we're about, just kind of go overview what we're about to do is we're about to touch how to do the view model and the state. Cool. So now we have our awesome, amazing to-dos application. But, you know, there's nothing really here yet. So we can go back in and start to implement basically our intent of the application. So I'm just going to have this as a placeholder. So I'm going to do to-dos list is going to be a screen. So you can imagine if a user, you may want to have a home screen for other reasons, right? If you wanted to say, show like an onboarding, workflow, charts, whatever, but this will be our to-do list screen. To-dos list. And we're just going to go scaffold, app bar, to-dos. Okay. I'll also show you that in GoRouter, we can have this as a subroute here, and this will be to-dos. We'll import it, and then instead of here, I can actually just make this a redirect. Let's see, I believe it takes 2 arguments. Yeah, context state, and I'm just gonna make it navigate to to-do. So we could, like I said, use the home for something, but this just means every time we navigate home, navigate to to-dos. So another thing we want to do is change this from stateless widget to consumer widget. Cool. We'll import it here. And then now add the widgets ref. And here is where we only depend on the repository. And I'll show you how we can make this even better in a second. Okay, to-dos. Actually, I'm just going to keep it like that. Read.watch. To-dos provider. Cool. Let's do one more thing, which is I'm going to take advantage of a new generator in Riverpod. Let's see. Yeah, it should have the generator. Let's look it up. This only supports Future right now, so it won't work for everything. But it lets us define a build time method to work with this kind of stuff. So in view model, after we import it, let's see. I'm going to go in here. Yeah, I need to do. Okay. Riverpod. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, here we go. Back in our code editor, we have Flutter pub add this. We're just going to go ahead and add the regular Riverpod 2. And we're going to add the generator. If you want to add it to your dev dependencies, you just do a suffix or tag it with -dev. Okay, so just like before, I'm going to create a .module.dart, and I'm just going to kind of copy some of this from their docs, but we're going to have main module g.dart. Okay, and then we're going to have a this is where we're going to define our future provider. Okay, we have a annotation, and we're going to do future to-dos, and then it'll be called load get to-dos, and this will be basically our reference, so it'd be get to-dos ref async and then close. Got to import our annotation, and then now we can run our builder. Okay, let's also import this here and just take a second. The nice thing about this is it'll generate some other nice to haves. Since we have this provider, let's just go ahead and grab it here. We can import, and then now we can return to-dos get load to-dos. All right. Should be good. It returns a future, and then now in our list we can instead prevent on get to-dos provider, and yeah, perfect. And if you look, we have an async value as a return type as opposed to our view model, and that is important because we can use the nice capabilities like when and map. We do body. We'll do map. And it gives us a nice error loading and data state. I like to put these in this kind of order. We're going to do this. I believe it may take, some data. Here we want to just show like an error message if for whatever reason they have an issue with it. Let's see, error, stack trace to string, and then finally we can load the actual to-dos list. add the trailing comma here. So if you see, we need to add the, that is an issue. Let's fix that. Okay, data, to-dos. This needs to be to-dos. Yeah, I apologize if we're all just seeing this now, but let's double check. Future to-dos list. Let's see. Shouldn't make a difference, but we got, okay. To-dos, provider, get to-dos. You know what? Let's just move over here. There you go. To-dos map, and then we have to-dos here. To-dos value dot values length. And here we finally get the description. Here we want to check to see if the description is null. And only render it appropriately. Let's reload. Okay, so we have this. We don't have any to-dos, and we should just still have our same screen. Let's create a floating action button, which will take us to our a new to-do screen. So we'll do context.go. I'll do to-dos add, and what I'm going to do is disable automatically apply leading. Sorry if I'm jumping around. Again, like I said, the code will be available later. And if we just hot reload, we'll see we have our to-do here. Let's add a nice helpful tooltip. Actually create it as an extended. Reload that one more time. Then awesome. We get this really cool fab. Okay, let's create the to-dos add screen. And we're gonna go in here. Awesome. Cool. It's a nice placeholder. Go back to our router. And then this will be a subroute. Here. It'd be called new. You can import it. Looks good. And then now we restart. We will have our to-dos. We hit add and we get an exception, and that's probably because I did the URL wrong. Change this to to-dos new. I'm going to go in to-dos list. Change that here. Okay. There we go. And why is it not loading? We have to-dos list, to-dos new. Sometimes we may just need to do it. Let's restart it. Okay, here's the to-dos. Why are you not loading? We have our to-dos here, router. This should work, but you know what? I'm going to go try one more thing before. just for sanity, I'm going to rename this. Awesome. Glad it's not working. Well, let's just change this to push real quick. There we go. For some reason, it's still showing this. Ah, you know what? I bet it's the redirect we did. So I am going to do this here. And I apologize. Sometimes when you do it live, things happen, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and restart. Let's see, the error is top level must start with that. Okay. Cool. So there we go. And it was probably just some piece of documentation I did not read. Okay. The Go router documentation is awesome. Make sure to check it out. And I forgot that the redirect will affect a subtree. So here we have the add to do. Cool. Like I said, still nothing a lot, but still gets us closer. Here is where our new architecture comes in. Let's say for every action in the application, we need to define how to handle that. And for a to-do application, you're going to read from those to-dos, add new ones, edit them, and delete them. So inside of our domain layer, we're going to create a new folder called use cases. In use cases, we can have, for example, things that we want to define. So I'm going to say get to do, and it's going to be an abstract class. It's up to you if you want to suffix this with the type. I typically just do to keep it looking good. We're going to have execute, and then let's see, we want to save a to-do. This one's going to return void to do. We're going to have delete to do. And probably delete, get, save. Let's also just make one for all the to-dos. We'll call this get to-dos use case. We're going to import the different model. This one will take no arguments. Okay, so whereas before we used the view model to do this, now we're going to have this, and then the view model depend on this feature instead. Now this may seem a little verbose, but this is another case where it'll make sense the more our app scales, and this makes it really easy to like swap out the contract in one place, as opposed to just creating a single class and throwing everything in. So let's go ahead and create the implementation for this one. And if there is anything I'm doing wrong about the clean architecture, please feel free to let me know. I am happy to be corrected. Okay, we're going to import it there. I'm going to override it. Here's another case where our implementation can actually depend on the top level thing. So here, yeah, it's going to be to-dos repository. And we're going to create a constructor for it. This is where we can just return the repository load. Awesome. We actually can just clean this up by making this an expression. Okay, so again, we will create a top level file called module.dart. We don't need to generate it. We're going to have get to-dos provider, and it's going to be it's just going to actually give us access to this class. We're going to do provider. You can also do the auto disposing too. I'm not doing it right in this case, but that is something we can totally do later if you want to further help with memory management. Just importing our files here. Cool. Let's do delete to do. It's just since it's alphabetical. Extends, here we go. Import. Hopefully this also shows you like kind of my workflow on some things. Okay, going to also import our repository. Going to execute. All right, let's do get to do. Get to do. Oh yeah, that's right. We want to take an ID. And like before, let's make this a tear off. I mean, not tear off, a expression. And what are we missing? We got get, delete, and we need save. Awesome. We have save here. Awesome. Okay. All right, a little verbose, but it kind of gets the point. Let's do get to do. This is actually going to take, this is going to be a family, which will be here. And family allows us to pass in one extra argument. The generator lets you specify multiple types, but in this case we'll do this. There's string, get to do, and we can do get to do implementation. You know what? Actually, we don't need to do that because that'll depend on our UI. So forget what I said on that. That could be useful later though. We're going to do save to do provider. And then also delete to do provider. Yep. Correct auto import there. And sorry if I'm going too quickly. I'm going to upload this video later so you can go through it at a different pace. Okay, so we got get, all, get, save, and delete. Okay, looks great. Now, taking that implementation we just did, let's depend on that use case in our view model instead. In our view model, instead of grabbing our to-dos provider, we're going to do get to-dos provider. And what this does, oh, and we need to rename this too. To-dos list. Okay. Let's just make sure, oh, we need to already run our generator. This will be our use case. All right, this is going to be our execute. Import here, to-dos, list, ref. Awesome, let's add that to our dictionary. Add that to our dictionary. And then cool. Now our view shouldn't change too much except for the name. But we should be able to just restart our application and still have the same. All right, sorry that we're not seeing a lot of stuff yet, but now this is where we're going to start adding. Let's go to that new screen. And this is where we're going to have that UI. Since we're going to be having a form, let's do a column. And we're going to wrap it with a container, which will be a single child scroll view. And another container, which will be our scroll bar. Add some trailing commas. All right, and then another thing is we want to be able to have a new, and then after it's saved, we want to go back to the list. So because of that, we're going to be actually doing the saving here. We can go and, now that I'm just realizing this, we probably want to have a way to edit and view from the same one, but we can do that in a minute. Let's go ahead and do stateful. Cool. Sorry. Yeah, let's look at this. Let's add a controller for each of the elements. So we're going to do title and description, and then a bool is completed. Just going quickly, we have, this will actually work. Title, description, perfect. Let's wrap it in a form and set the auto validate mode to always. Now we need to specify our form key. Go down here, pass it through. Cool. Now we need to make sure that this is not null, so we'll use the validator. Now we need text form field, validator. Yep, that looks good. Please enter a title. Description can be null, so that's okay. Checkbox list title on change will update the is completed. Okay, just want to make sure it's mounted. Now we need a floating action button to save. I'm just gonna remove this implementation label icon and then on pressed. Cool. We're gonna first check to see if it's validated. If it is, then we're gonna do form key.save. Now we can create our new to-do item. So this is going to be our to-do, which we can import from our model. Title is going to be title to text, description is completed. Cool. And ID. Okay, so this is where we want to use a generator. So I like to use, let's see if I can find it. I like to use short ID. It's worked for a lot of my apps. We can just go ahead and do it. We'll add it to our generator. Now we can import it. Cool. So we have a unique ID, which we then now can save. Okay, so this is, you can make a decision here, both decisions, can be valid, but we can either update this directly, which we probably wouldn't want to depend on, or we can use a view model. Since the form state is going to handle a lot of this stuff anyway, I say we go ahead and do it here. So one cool thing about Riverpod is it lets you define the same thing like we did before, but inside of a stateful widget. So we can go in here and do late, final, to-dos. Actually, it would be save to do use case. And that'll be ref.read save to use case provider. Actually, I don't think we had a suffix of it. Save to do imports. No, let's double check. Save to do provider. Yeah. Here. And then now we can go in, execute our to do. This will take a future. So one important thing is anytime we do an asynchronous task, we're going to grab the state before we do something. So we're going to do messenger. And then I like to do this extension method on the build scaffold messenger to show a toast. We're going to do toast and this is going to be scaffold messenger. Let's see, it's this show. No, that can't be right. It's, yeah, show snack bar. Cool. Toast, and then now we'll execute, and then do our toast. To do saved. Got to throw in a happy exclamation point. Okay, looking good so far. Let's restart. Oh, and then let's pop. Maybe, oh, same thing. We need to grab our router. Router dot maybe it doesn't have it. That's fine. If router can pop. Okay, looks good. Blah 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 blah. We saved it. Cool. All right. Restart. Now we have our to-dos. We're presented with this form. Let's add that some padding. Cool, looks good. And let's do awesome to do. We hit save, to do save, and we don't see anything yet, and that's okay. And that is because we are calling a future. So one thing we'll want to do is inside of our to-dos list, we need to add a refresh state, which will call a rebuild. So actually, you know what? No, we're not going to do a refresh state. We're going to do a view model. So this will be final to-dos list notifier. It's going to be a change notifier provider. Like I said, there's probably many ways to do this, but this is something that's worked well for me. I'm going to go into do's, value notifier Okay, values. And now we're going to have our view model. To-dos. No, we're going to have a future that's going to be called to get to-dos. No, I don't like that. We're going to let's do a state. Inside of our model, let's grab our boilerplate. We're going to go in here and call state. Here, refresh. And here, but let's just define a union type. I'm going to rename this to to-dos. To-dos state. Okay, and then we're going to have a loading. We're going to have a loaded or ready. We're going to go ahead and import that. And maybe an error. Yeah. String. Yeah, that looks good. Okay. Let's rebuild that. We might get an error because of this, which is okay. We can remove this, and then now we will have our state. So this will be a class for state notifier. To-dos, you know, now that I'm writing this, I think we should just use the state notifier directly. We have our, I think this will actually make better sense. So yeah, ignore that. Get to-dos is going to be ref.read. Here we can execute. It's going to be future of to-dos. Cool. Then now, here we go. This will be a to-dos list state. Yeah, and I'm keeping all this in because I want to show that sometimes it's a little bit of an iterative process, and yeah, I definitely don't get it right always the first time. Okay, so we have our to-dos list provider, which provides the model to actually do it. Here we can go ahead and call our load the first time it's created. And then this is what we'll actually use over here. And this is why I said that sometimes it can be problematic, to say the least, to now use it in two places. But we're going to go into our to-dos here, and then now we need to update the to-dos model. So this will be late final to-dos list. It's going to be ref.read. To-dos list model, and then we're going to do await dot load to-dos, right? No, we need the provider itself. Maybe it's notifier. Is that it? Let's see. To-dos list, notifier. Nope. We need to also provide the model. Okay. to-dos list model. Yeah, to-dos list provider, notifier. Yeah, here, grab this instead, to-dos list, and then load to-dos. Okay, now we should be cooking. That's gonna load, it's gonna execute. Our list is now gonna have, yes, our different one, which will be our to-dos list provider. Let's do the as state instead. Okay, and then we'll do, this will actually probably make it a bit simpler. It should give us an optional to-dos, yeah. Here, you can remove this. But at least I showed you the other way to do it. To-dos.values, like we made before. Okay, so you see how it's like showing that error? That's where I was talking about. We can just go in here. We should have a missing file. Delete, undo, and go back right to our thing. Let's restart. Let's do awesome to do. Hit save, and then boom, we see it. Now, a cool thing we can do here is because we have an ability to edit it on the fly, we can do some other things too. So because we're executing this, one thing we can do is inside of our module, have a method called save to do. And this is where we can actually do both of that logic for us. Inside of our new class, we can just rename this to model, completely remove our dependency on that, and then instead we can call save. Simple change, but like you see, we don't have to show anything different on the UI. Okay, on the to-do list, we probably want to be able to like check off to-dos. So we do checkbox list tile. We will have a value called, it'll be for it's completed. And then an unchanged. Cool. So we're gonna have if value is not equivalent to null, we're gonna have new to do, and this will be our copy width, and we're gonna have our model, which will actually do the saving. As before, we want to grab our messenger. And in our context, let's go ahead and make this a shared one. You can do an extensions here. Import material. Import our extension. And grab that because it'll be helpful. Oh. There, and our final toast. Okay, so now if we restart, we can get this. Oh yeah. Hit save, and then see, we probably don't want to show this every time. So let's remove that. And then that error that we saw is a on will pop, which we can take advantage of from the form. And let's do bool. let's do an event callback. Okay, and then here, oh, and let's also set up our listeners. So this will be title, description, true, and then here we can do a if edit it, and then this is kind of like the web where it's like, would you like to, check for discarded changes, and then here, yeah, do you want to discard your changes? I usually abstract this away as a prompt method or a confirm, but here we have this. Okay, looks good, yes. Let's also make this a destructive. This would be text button style from, and I want the foreground color to be red, so it'd be theme color scheme down the bottom according to the lint. We have our to-do list. We're now saving, and yeah, okay. So I thought we would need to make this a multi-purpose edit and whatever. I think we should. So let's go ahead and do to-do list dot edit, and we're going to pass in our initial to-do if it exists. Going to add our final form fields here. Should have just added this directly. A router is here, and then since we could tap to it from a list, we will pass it in. So let's see, what do we get? What about a trailing? No, because the checkbox. What other callbacks do we get? Let's just remove this, make this a regular list tile, and just handle editing. Here we have to-do's ID. This will pass in an instance, so speaking of that, let's go ahead and rename this. Cool. Here we can pass in our ID parameter. State.params.id. Okay, and then our to-do list will push to the to-dos based on the ID. Awesome. Our edit will go in here. Now we have to do one other step, which is, okay, if the widget.todo ID is not equal to null, now we need to fetch the ID. So here in our to-dos list model, let's do future for to-do get, yeah, get to-do provider, execute ID, and then yeah, that should be good. Yeah. To-dos list, model. One more curly brace. We'll do model.get widget dot to do ID, then if the value is not equal to null, we're going to update things accordingly. This is also completed. Everything else will be notified except for this. Add that extra brace. Okay. Looks good. Now when we run our application, we should be able to edit and delete. So, oh, while we're thinking about it, if there is an empty list, we should probably handle that. Probably don't need our model anymore. What to do is that values is empty. We can do a center. Otherwise, do that. Here we'll do a child. No to-dos found. Cool. Go in here, to-dos. We're going to do hello world. Awesome description. We hit save. Cool. So we have our new to-do. Let's actually add a trailing to show that you probably want to be able to click on it. Actually, yeah, we could add a checkbox there. That's a good suggestion from the Copilot. We're going to do save to do copied with if value is not equal to null. Grab this, update that. Final new to do. Okay, there's our trailing. That should make a little bit more sense for a list. We can check it off. Maybe we also want to do this thing where we want to sort by basically if you've completed it, it goes to the bottom. If you haven't, it kind of shows the list. So in our model, we probably want to do a list of to-do for get completed to-dos, and then active to-dos, yeah. Sorry, like I said, if I'm jumping around, but hopefully this makes sense. Okay, so we will want to have an expansion tile at the bottom. So we will do a column with an expanded, and this will be our active to-dos. Watching the model. Let's actually change this to an extension method. No, we don't want to extend it to extension method. We want to do something else, and that is inside of our model, we can do a private constructor. Now this is what we want. Let's go ahead and build. Can make this active. Okay, so model, we ignore that. Back to our list. This is where we get the active ones. And then completed. Cool. So now we have to change this. And first thing is we're going to be using this in two places, so might as well make a reusable widget. So this is where we have our widgets class, to do tile, import material, stateless to do tile. Gonna go add our to do. Add our form field. Go router. We can make this a consumer widget, which will add our widget ref. Now we can add our provider. Go back to our list, change this to just have a single to do. All right, it's looking pretty good. And now this is where I was hoping to do an expansion tile. If I can spell it right. Expansion tile. We'll call this completed. Children will be this. Actually, I want to do it as this way. To do tile. Cool. So we have our completed down here. Let's also only show this if this is not empty. And then we'll have this, by default, it's false. Okay, so let's do another to do. And we need to make sure we move this down over here. So since active could be empty, but we could still have to-dos. And let's see. So we have 1, 2. I see that it's showing the description. It's not equal to null. And to do dot description is not empty. Cool, that's what I wanted. So now we mark it, it goes down to our completed. And we can still access it, so we can still go to it, still update our description. If we've edited it, we can discard our changes or save. We're gonna hit save. And we see, or since we discarded, we don't see it. We can do, let's like add a smiley. This one we don't want to discard our changes and we want to save. And, if we save, we need to make sure we check by ID. Going back to the, this is why we depend on our abstract classes. Let's go to our to-dos repository up in the data class. Let's look at what we just did. So save checks to see where it is, and then this, we need to make sure this accounts for both adding and editing. So let's do edit if exists. Actually, we'll do if existing. We want to create a new to do. Update, yeah, title, description, completed. We will create, yeah, map, blah, blah, blah. Can create a block body here, simplify it right, and then we'll do else. This will be where we add. This will be to-dos, values. We can just go right here, edit this. Actually, we might want to restart. Let's check this. To-do, save. Title 2, save. Complete this one. Let's go over here and rename it to title 3. and we still have our duplication. And that is because on the to do edit, we're creating a new ID. And we can do that by going up here, widget.todo. Simple mistake. Okay, let's do mark this as completed, discard changes. Let's just go ahead and add an option to delete it. You know what? If widget.todoID is not equal to null, do that, and then we'll now create an icon button for delete. Cool. Are you sure I want to delete this to do? If confirmed, we'll do model. Let's add it to our model, actually. I guess that would help. We're going to load to do. Let's change our implementation. Here, we're going to go into do implementation. Change it one place and change it over here. Because I still want to pass in, no. Yes, I still want to pass in. I do not want to pass in the ID here because it could not exist, especially like if they landed on my page for whatever reason. I'm going to go in here, go back to the implementation, delete here, model ID, execute, cool, back on the edit. And then go router of. Let's do this before the async. If router can pop, we want to pop. Okay, if we go to title 3. Yes, we want to delete. Now we can check our edit, save, and boom. So what have we done? We have created an application where we can add to-dos, rename them, edit them, delete them, and then kind of present a different list. Also, one final thing, I'm just going to move this up to the app bar because of our completed UI down here at the bottom. Icon. Oh, cool. Okay, so now we have our compact to-do screen. We could also make this better by making it adaptive and whatnot. So we have here another task, hit save. You can see our completed. You can go in, edit, discard, blah, blah. Oh, if you saw that, it said discard when we haven't changed anything, and that is because of this. We can go ahead and just say this is false. Let's double check. Yes. Okay. Looks awesome. Hopefully this helps. And I probably didn't do the best of explaining it, but overall, I think it will make sense, hopefully, in the example. just wanted to say thanks so much for watching. And if you have questions, please reach out to me on Twitter. I've been exploring this clean architecture method in Flutter, and I'm really starting to like how it's working with my applications. Huge thanks to Riverpod for making it awesome to just share these classes and implementations throughout my application. I think it's really cool. Yeah, I think that this method may seem heavy-handed for like a simple application, but I would argue that if you learn this kind of architecture, something I like to do is repeat it in all my projects so that any project I come to in the future, I know exactly where to put a file. I know where to look for stuff that exists, and then it makes it easy to update it over time. This also will help you as you are working with someone on a code base. You can put logic in exact places and depend on services without stepping over each other. Yeah, there's a book where you can learn more about it. I did the Audible that I think it was pretty cool. But yeah, please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter if you have things that I could have done better, because I'm sure there's a lot. Yeah, just wanted to say thanks so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe, like, share, and stay safe. I'll see you next time. Thanks.